Okay, we're starting Chapter 1 Read Aloud today. The Boys Who Challenged Hitler, Nud Peterson, and the Churchill Club. The author is Philip Hose. He just finished a biography on the young lady who was supposed to be the first Rosa Parks. Last name is Colvin, so if you're interested in that book, it's a really good book. So The Boys Who Challenged Hitler, if you look at the inside desk cover, it gives you a nice little summary. World War II has started. Hitler is invading European countries. Denmark did not resist the German occupation the way that Norway did. And these young boys who are your age, most of them 15, some 14, some 16, they named their secret club after Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and they committed countless acts of sabotage, infuriating the Germans, who eventually tracked them down. You see a picture of the boys who started it, the main leaders of Denmark. And then you see a picture of Nud Peterson and the author Philip Hose after they finally met and got to visit, and Philip got to get Nud's story. So when you look at how this all came to be, what you learn is when the Germans invaded Denmark, they basically gave them two options. After the war, you'll share a glorious future with us, or you can resist and be demolished. Denmark's king and political leaders accepted Hitler's offer to basically be occupied by Germany. Norway resisted and suffered awful losses, and these events inspired Nud Peterson, who was 14 at the time, and several of his buddies and his brother to start a group to sabotage Germany's occupation. Chapter 1, Oprop, which is a misspelled Danish word for attention. April 9th, 1940. It was a breakfast like any other until the dishes started to rattle. Then an all-alert siren pierced the morning calm, and the sky above Odense, Denmark, thundered with sound. The Peterson family pushed back their chairs, raced outside, and looked up. Suspended above them in close formation was a squadron of dark planes. They were flying ominously low, nor more than 100 meters above the ground. The black marks on each wing tagged them as German warplanes. Scraps of green paper fluttered down. Nud Peterson, 14, stepped over and plucked one from the lawn. Oprop, it began. Slightly misspelled, that meant something like attention in Danish. Though the leaflet addressed the Danish soldiers and the Danish people, was written in an error-filled garble of German, Danish, and Norwegian, the point was unmistakable. German military forces had invaded Denmark and were now occupying the country. The leaflet explained that they had arrived to protect the Danes from the sinister English and French, that Denmark had become a protectorate of Germany. So there was no need to worry. Everyone was protected now. Danes should go on with their lives as usual. Nud looked around at his neighbors, still in their pajamas, appeared dazed. Others were furious. Across the street, a father and his two sons stood at rigid attention on their apartment balcony, right arms thrust reverently up toward the German planes. Mr. Anderson, the merchant who sold Tarzan comics from his kiosk on the corner, was shaking his fist at the sky. All four neighbors would be dead within 3 years. The following day, Denmark's Prime Minister, Thorvald Stauning, and the Danish King, Christian X, put their signatures to an agreement allowing Germany to occupy Denmark and take control of the government. A terse proclamation explained Denmark's official position. The government has acted in the honest conviction that in doing so, we have saved the country from an even worse fate. It will be our continued endeavor to protect our country and its people from the disasters of war, and we shall rely on the people's cooperation. All day long, German soldiers poured into Odense and other cities on boat, plane, tank, and transport wagon. Ordinary German foot soldiers of the German Defense Force, the Wehrmacht, Wehrmacht wore brownish-green uniforms with black hobnail boots and rounded green helmets. Well prepared, they quickly took over the town, setting up barracks and command centers and hotels, factories, and schools. They pounded German language directional signs into public squares and strung miles of telephone lines between headquarters, operation centers, and barracks. By the end of the day, there were 16,000 Germans on Danish soil, and Germany was in total control. When darkness fell, the Wehrmacht took the streets of Denmark to explore their new home. In Odense, Denmark's third largest city, many Danish merchants were delighted to open taps of beer or sell pastries to German troops. In fact, the huge new market seemed a windfall. German soldiers pushed into Odense theaters, taverns, bakeries, and cafes. In the evenings, the Wehrmacht soldiers marched arm in arm with Odense streets, weapons strapped to their shoulders, bellowing folk songs in unison as onlooking Danes cocked their heads in curiosity. Nud Peterson watched from the crowd. The commander would shout, 3, 4, and they would all begin to sing. Some songs were romantic ballads, others military marches. Either way, they looked ridiculous. They actually seemed to believe that we liked them. They behaved as if we wanted them there, as if we had been waiting for them, like we were grateful to them. A tall, slender teen, Nud Peterson, had known and cared little about war or politics until that Friday morning in April. He was a reasonably good student and handy with his fists, as you had to be at his all-boys school. But Nud's real loves were drawing and painting. Each Saturday morning he met his favorite cousin, Hans Jorgen Andersen, at the Odense Library. They went straight for the volumes of art history, flipped to the breathtaking nudes of Rubens or to Greek sculptures of the female figure, and started drawing. To Nud and Hans Jorgen, the half-draped Venus de Milo was 100 times more interesting than the fully clothed Mona Lisa. On Sundays, after Nud's father, the Reverend Edvard Peterson, completed his Protestant church service, the Peterson family would convene in the church residency with aunts, uncles, and cousins from other branches, forming a great tribe. In the office, uncles drank and swore their way through a fast-moving, table-slamming card game called L'Ombre. Nud's mother, Margrethe, and his many aunts occupied the sitting room, knitting, sipping tea, and talking nonstop, getting up now and then to tend the slow-cooking chickens whose aroma grew stronger from the kitchen by minute. Children, including Nud, his brother Jens, a year older, his sister Gertrude, 2 years younger, and his much younger brothers Jorgen and Holger, played on the second floor, creating and painting scenery for the evening performance of Robin Hood or Snow White or Robinson Crusoe. Each child got to invite a friend. By evening, there were dozens of laughing, drinking, applauding friends and family, full and satisfied. It was like growing up in a cocoon. Nud had been only dimly aware that Germany had invaded Poland the year before, and he was oblivious to the special peril that Jews faced with Hitler in control. Before its planes arrived on April 9th, Germany had seemed no more than the neighborhood bully, a bordering country with 20 times Denmark's population and an undue influence on Danish history and culture. Even before the war, Danish students had to study German in school, learning German literature and play German music. Adolf Hitler had not seemed a particular menace either. In 1937, the fourth year of Hitler's Nazi regime, the Peterson family had gone on a motor tour of Germany in the family's big green Nash Rambler. As they rolled through neatly cropped pastures and well-managed towns, Nud's parents expressed admiration for what Hitler had accomplished. There was a sense of order and industry in the small towns and cities. Germans were at work while many other nations were still mired in a worldwide economic depression. At the end of the trip, their father had pinned a small flag with a swastika on the windshield of their car. When they entered Denmark, Danes in the border villages, neighbors who knew the Nazis well, suggested they remove it at once. But now all this innocence was gone. A bubble popped. German forces had also stormed into Norway on April 9th, but Norway fought back, standing up to the mighty German war machine and paying with a heavy loss of life. In those early days after the German invasions, there were sickening news accounts of Norwegian soldiers slaughtered in defense of their nation. Many were boys in their late teens. Meanwhile, Danish schoolchildren were being peppered with Nazi propaganda describing the glorious future awaiting them. Nud Peterson: I was in 8th grade when the Germans came. We had about 2 months of schooling remaining until summer recess. The occupation was on everyone's mind, but during those weeks our teachers kept telling us not to talk about it. Don't object, don't mouth off. We mustn't arouse the giant. There were many German sympathizers on our school faculty. In Denmark, our second language was German, and our books suddenly sprouted all these articles about the happy Hitler youth who went out in the sunshine and camped and hiked through the forest and played in the mountains and got to visit old castles and all that bloody garbage. It was easy to see that it was all crap. And that's chapter 1.